Hi everyone, this is Brian checking in on a Friday afternoon. I'm at the Historical Society of Washington, D.C., as you'll recall. We still don't have our collection back in-house. We're not any closer to getting the materials back into our building, as you'll remember from the introductory video. So the research library is absolutely not open. So that is still going to be the majority of my work, but still hasn't happened yet. So in the meantime, we had a kind of a fun event 2 weeks ago. We had a group called the Alliance for Response, which is, I believe it's a nationwide initiative, but it gets together professionals in a local area, so in this case, Washington, D.C., to talk about emergency preparedness and cultural heritage institutions. So we had a bunch of people over to the Carnegie Library to talk about our new space and kind of give it an assessment and have people network with each other, talk about putting an emergency cart together. And the emergencies I'm talking about are environmental things like floods or water damage to collections, things like that. So we had a walkthrough of our building and had everyone kind of do an assessment on the space. And one thing that came up especially was in our collection spaces, which now are empty, but when they will eventually have a bunch of old manuscripts and things, all the access is controlled through these electronic fob keys, and there's no manual physical key. So in some kind of emergency situation where the key stopped working, we're not going to be able to get to the collections. So that's something we're working on resolving. That's what happens when Apple redoes your building. You get a bunch of fancy technology, but what happens in an emergency, we're not sure. So, as part of this, I kind of got tasked with putting together an emergency cart, and that's just something you have with your collection that you hopefully never have to use, but is there to protect things if you have like sprinklers going off for some reason, or you have a leak in a floor above. So your emergency kit should have like plastic sheeting and tape and pens and paper to write down what you did, what you moved, things to hold the doors open. So if someone does get the doors open and emergency personnel need to get in, you prop the doors open, just things like that you might not think of, but that's what this kind of conference is about, just reminding us of some simple things. Gloves is another thing. I'm also been working on turning some legacy finding aids from the Historical Society that are just kind of long Word documents and making them DAX compliant. So breaking the information out into fields that are specified, I think by the SIA, not sure on that, but whoever put together the DAX standard. One of our volunteers just wrote this very loving and long description of the collection down to the item level, and it's great and it's very informative, but it doesn't follow the format that we're trying to standardize to. So I've been taking those long finding aids and kind of trying to fit them in necessary fields. So that's the most kind of archivey thing I've done in the absence of having an actual archive. So that was very fun for me. As far as the readings go, where I see information professionals going, I think, for the past 20 years of the internet and whatnot, we've just had an abundance of records that we're creating now. Everything is saved, and with emails and spreadsheets and Word documents and everything, it's all saved somewhere. And I think there's a real opportunity for information professionals like ourselves to kind of organize that information and preserve it. In the past, if you were just dealing with filing cabinets and putting paper documents into filing cabinets, that's pretty straightforward, and it's kind of easy to find. Well, maybe not easy to find stuff, but kind of a universal way of finding things. But now with everything being saved digitally and born digital documents, you've got different file types, and it's all saved in different places. And I I think there's real value in our profession for being able to organize that information such that it's able to be found fairly easily, and also to control access to that information so it's available to who needs it, but not necessarily to everyone. And making it discoverable is the most, I think, important aspect. So metadata and things like that associated. And then, preserving it for the future, making sure the data you saved stays saved and file formats don't degrade or become obsolete. So that's kind of where I see the field and the benefits of what we're doing and how it pertains to the future. So, on the mentor question, I don't have a mentor in this field. The closest thing I had when I was a brewer, the guy, when this was not exactly the relationship they're describing in the article, that was more of like two professionals from different organizations at different levels in their careers. So this was more of an apprenticeship sort of thing with the guy I was learning from, teaching me on the job. But it's similar. So I think the most important thing is to have a mentor that's willing to teach you, as mine was. Shout out to Barrett Lauer at District Chop House. He was very patient with me and very tolerant of mistakes, and that's a very good way for me to learn, for anyone to learn. And he wasn't just there to have me do work for him and use me as labor. So he was very patient and willing to teach. I was willing to learn, of course. It was a new job for me, so I had nothing to do but learn. So having personalities that mesh, and doing stuff outside of work, being social and together a lot, I think it's good for the relationship. So I think I'm at the time limit here, so I'll say goodbye. Cheers.